ISS is now out playing in theaters. Alright, so from the get-go, when I first saw these trailers, I was immediately intrigued by this premise. Because if you don't know what this is, and you might not know because it's such a small film and it has been barely marketed, you got American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts on the International Space Station when a war on Earth between America and Russia happened, and both sides are contacted by their countries telling them to take the other side out by any means necessary. Could they wait till they fall asleep and tie them up and store them somewhere inside the International Space Station? No, by any means necessary. That means it must be death. Alright, so let me talk about what worked for me in this movie, and by far was the best part of this movie, and that was the setup of the thing, because I thought they set up this story very well. Especially in a movie like this where you're gonna have characters who are trapped in tight quarters going head to head with each other in a to the death type of match, you want to see them first have that camaraderie, and they give the film enough time to establish these characters' camaraderie when they're on the International Space Station. Granted, you don't get very much time with these characters' camaraderie, but the writing and the performers make them likable enough that when you see them hanging out around the dinner table on the first night at the International Space Station and you know what's about to come, you do feel a little bad about the thing. On top of that, the International Space Station was used so well as a setting. I love claustrophobic thrillers. I love when characters are trapped in one location and the whole movie takes place there. And what's more claustrophobic than the International Space Station? That thing is cramped. And you feel the crampedness, you feel the isolation and just how removed they are from any other form of civilization. And once everything is set into action, once you see Earth engulfed in the fireballs of nuclear explosions all over the globe, the reactions from the characters as well as just the visuals, it does get a little chilling. Unfortunately though, after this setup, after the movie really started to take off, it really started to lose me. And a lot of that boils down to the fact that this movie, I felt, had like no tension. Yes, you get both sides, the Russians and the Americans, talking to each other, trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do. But it always felt so surface level. It never felt like the film got that deep with their psychology, with their paranoia. You do get instances where they do start to doubt themselves. They do get a little paranoid of, what's that other person whispering to that person? Are they conspiring to kill me? But as an audience member sitting there wasn't that guessing game really going on for me. And it's very clear that the movie does not want to set up a villain. You don't want to tick off the Americans by having the Americans be the villains, and you don't want to tick off the Russians by having the Russians be the villains. So the movie kind of has its cake and eats it too. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because when you have 6 characters and you're exploring how each one is reacting to this situation, you're going to have people who go a little crazy. You're going to have some people who are going, hey, you know what, let's just stay calm, let's follow the procedures, and let's see if we can get over this thing. But the movie doesn't really feel like it does that. This movie feels like it takes characters and switches their motivations constantly throughout the entire 95-minute runtime. To the point that it feels like this movie has like 5 different villains going on at the same time. When one villain gets taken out, they just move on to the next guy and they give him a terrible motivation and make him a villain. And by doing that, I just found the concept of these characters trapped in the International Space Station while the war is going on down below. What are they going to do when their sides are asking them to take the other side out? It lost that in this muddled, bloated, overly complicated additions to the plot that really weren't needed. And the film doesn't really go that much into how the characters are feeling about what's happening on Earth. There's one guy who keeps talking about how he wants to talk to his daughters. But other than that, that's pretty much it. It's actually pretty surprising just how much I kind of forgot about the war happening on Earth for a majority of what was happening in this movie. And look, in the end, this is a thriller. This is a psychological thriller. And as a thriller, for me, it was not thrilling. I was never once on the edge of my seat. I felt like the movie overdid it with how many more conflicts they added into the movie while just having that central idea of, hey, war on Earth, we're up here, and we don't know what's going on down there, but we have to fight you guys. You can kind of feel it that this movie wants to be like The Thing, like that kind of a psychological thriller, but it just misses the mark and becomes so generic. The pacing for a 95-minute runtime does kind of drag a little bit. I was surprised that I had to check my clock during this movie. And by the time you get to the end, it feels like the writers have written themselves into this corner that it just kind of ends. and it ends in a way that I felt dissatisfied. Unfortunately, in the end, this movie has an amazing concept that the execution just never lives up to. It's not the worst movie ever, it's not awful, but it's really not that great, and for that reason, I'm gonna say there's plenty of other things you could see other than this, so I'm gonna give it a weak not recommend. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on ISS. But what do you guys think of ISS? Have you had a chance to check it out yet? Comment down below and let me know. And if you're new here and you haven't heard, we have a goal on this channel. We want to hit 4,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you're new here and you like talking about movies, you like talking about Marvel, DC, blockbusters, lower budget movies, movies like ISS in January, well, consider joining our community. We'd love to have you. Hit that subscribe button before you make your way out of here. As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.